What up, guys? Chris here to try to do these MMA Awards, similar to the Boxing Awards video I posted yesterday or last night. Hope you guys all had a good Christmas or holiday, whatever you guys celebrate. I'm only going to do a short version of this. I have a lot more awards to talk about, but I'm going to save most of those for the radio show, Science and Violence radio show going on in less than an hour's time, unless you're seeing this later. You can always catch the podcast at a later time, or, just on demand whenever. But I'm just going to go over some of the awards. Knockout of the year. The nominations I have are Anthony Njokuani knocking out Horodecki, Rich Franklin over Chuck Liddell, Shogun Hua over Lyoto Machida in the rematch, Mike Russow's come from behind knockout over Todd Duffee, Carlos Condit, Dan Hardy, Robbie Lawler, Melvin Manhoef, George Roop head kick over the Korean Zombie, Paul Daley's most recent star cheating of Scott Smith, and the Gerald Harris slam of Dave Branch. That was on SportsCenter top 10 afterwards. Personally, I got to go with Lawler versus Manhoef. You could also put Lawler and Lindland in there as well, but I went with Lawler and Manhoef because Lawler was getting his ass kicked that whole first round and getting the leg kicked out of him, literally, and looked like he was on his way to losing that fight. And then out of nowhere, at the end of the round, just absolutely caught Manhoef, dropped him, finished him off, and he was losing the fight, so it was a dramatic knockout. And he absolutely had Manhoef out cold. Scary looking knockout. But, so yeah, that's my choice. But, of course, I'd like to hear your guys's. Also, I'll put all the nominations in the description part of the video underneath. So if you want to leave your thoughts and leave your comments on who you think should win these awards, or who you would give the award to, you can kind of go over the list that I've compiled. Next up, submission of the year. I got nominations are Cole Miller over Dan Lauzon, Anderson Silva submitting Chael Sonnen, Chris Leben's triangle over Yoshihiro Akiyama, Fabricio Werdum submitting Fedor Emelianenko, and I went with Scott Jorgensen's guillotine over Chad George just for the sheer brutality of it. I mean, lifting him off the ground by his neck. That was brutal stuff. As for the winner, I think the front runners are clearly Anderson Silva's over Chael Sonnen and Fedor Emelianenko's loss to Fabricio Werdum. Close call, but I went with Fabricio Werdum submitting Fedor. Both were, very dramatic in their own way. Anderson's was late to win the fight, and of course, Werdum's was early, which was that much more unexpected about it. But I mean, it was Fedor. And the reason I went with the Fedor one is because, although both were heavily talked about afterwards, I think I was more shocked by the Fedor one. And just the way it played out, he was caught in it. You thought maybe he could get out of it. He fought, and then just the dramatic one tap just really solidified it for me as my choice. Just very dramatic and something I didn't think I'd see. It was very, shouldn't be shocked by it considering Werdum's ground game, but was still quite surprised by it at the moment it happened. Or shocked by it, I should say. So that's mine. Fight of the year. Candidates. Got Yoshihiro Akiyama against Chris Leben. Great back and forth fight. Anderson Silva, Chael Sonnen. Anthony Pettis' recent win over Ben Henderson. Korean Zombie Chan Sung Young over Leonard Garcia, or against Leonard Garcia. A fight not a lot of people saw, Jorge Santiago against Kazuya Masaki at Sengoku. Carlos Condit, Roy McDonald. And a fight that I think is under the radar, Mark Hominick against Yves Jobin. That was a very, very good action-packed fight for as long as it lasted. My winner, maybe it was because it was the most recent fight, but I don't think so. But I went with Anthony Pettis, Ben Henderson. Masaki Santiago was a great fight, similar to Henderson Pettis, maybe even a little bit better, maybe. But unfortunately, I didn't get to see it live, so it kind of took all the drama out of it because I already knew who won. But a great fight, though. If you haven't seen it or you don't know who won, go back and check that out on YouTube. My reason for choosing Pettis Henderson, exciting fight, back and forth fight, Henderson won round 1, Pettis 2, Henderson 3, Pettis 4. The 5th round was up for grabs, even late when Pettis finally hit that kick for that knockdown and, won that round and won the fight ultimately. Plus, round 4 was probably one of the best rounds of the year, where both guys were in danger at times. So, and, also it was coming out party for Pettis this year. Won the round with that kick. You won the WC title. Also earned a shot at the UFC lightweight title. So just a lot of elements that brought it all together in a great fight. In the final fight in the WC. So a very good fight. And that was my choice for fight of the year. Most disappointing fight. Fight that I think was just not necessarily the worst fight. There's a lot of bad fights out there, like say Nick Lance, Andre Winner. That's probably the worst fight I saw this year, but just fights that disappointed because maybe I expected more out of them. My candidates: Randy Couture, James Toney. Sure, it went pretty much as expected, but I still hope for more. GSP against Dan Hardy. I thought Hardy would bring it a little bit more. All the trash talk, I thought it'd be more competitive, but GSP shut him down. Anderson Silva, Damian Maia. If you saw it, you already know why. Terrible fight. Rampage Rashad. Expected more out of that. A lot of trash talk going into it. Didn't really live up to expectations, or at least my expectations. Frank Mir, Mirko Cro Cop. If you saw this fight, you already know. Terrible fight. Terrible fight. Terrible fight. BJ Penn, Frank Edgar 2. Not necessarily a bad fight, but I thought it would be a lot more competitive than the first fight, or close to the first fight, and it was really one-sided. So not a bad fight, but I was just disappointed by it. But credit to Frankie Edgar for shutting BJ Penn down. And this is more of a personal one, but the rematch between Ben Henderson and Cowboy Cerrone, Donald Cowboy Cerrone. I think I expected another war like your first fight, and unfortunately it ended early with a guillotine win by Ben Henderson on my Cowboy fan, so maybe that was more of a personal thing. But my choice would be Rampage Rashad. Like I said, long build-up to this fight. They were all coaches of the Ultimate Fighter, a lot of trash talk. Everyone's looking forward to this fight. Got a lot of play on ESPN even, but just really it wasn't all that exciting of a fight. Just not a lot of action. So except for the opening minute and the last minute, but that was it. So that was my personal most disappointing fight of the year. I also had best event of the year and worst event of the year. I'll just talk about those on the radio show because there's a lot to go over on those. But as far as my best event of the year, I think I'm going to go with that recent Strikeforce event. With the 3 first-round knockouts in a row to close it out: Henderson, Babalu, Smith, Daley, and Lawler, Linden. Really good event. You can check out the nominees, like I said, in the information part of this vid, and go over them and let me know what you think is the best and worst events of the year. The worst event of the year I thought was UFC 112 Invincible, Silva, Maia, Penn, Edgar, Hughes, Renzo Gracie, the one that happened in Abu Dhabi. Just a really bad event. Although the Mir Cro Cop, UFC 119, really bad event as well. Really, really boring event. Almost every fight went to a decision. Fighter of the year. Got Jose Aldo. He beat Uriah Faber and Manny Gamborian. Dominic Cruz beat Brian Bowles for the title. Beat Joseph Benavidez and beat Scott Jorgensen. And now he's the UFC Bantamweight champion, the first ever. Frank Edgar beat BJ Penn twice. Chris Leben. He had 3 good wins. Jay Silva, Aaron Simpson, Yoshihiro Akiyama. He'd probably be comeback fighter of the year if I would have done that category. George St. Pierre dominated Dan Hardy and Josh Koscheck. Cain Velasquez beat Antonio Mentor Rodrigo Nogueira. And, of course, Brock Lesnar to become the UFC heavyweight champion. And Anthony Pettis knocked out Danny Castillo with a head kick, beat Alex Karalexis, beat Shane Roller, and, of course, beat Ben Henderson. I'm going to go with Pettis. Beat 4 guys. And that Henderson fight, like I said, was probably the fight of the year. Like I said, he really became a star this year after that World of Jank show he was on MTV. Just really excited and set the MMA world abuzz with that head kick that he landed on Ben Henderson in the 5th round of that fight. So, got to give Anthony Pettis his due. I think this was the year of Anthony Pettis, especially the way he ended it. Lastly, story of the year. This is just, I think, what story was the biggest story of the year overall. First up, I would go with Fedor losing. Obviously, that was a big moment. The Anderson Silva Chael Sonnen fight, the fight itself had a lot of buzz afterwards, leading into it as well. And, of course, the fallout of it with Chael Sonnen failing the drug test, post-fight drug test. So, just the whole fight itself, the competitiveness of it, the way it ended, and, of course, the controversy afterwards with Sonnen failing the drug test. Cain Velasquez becoming the first heavyweight combat sports champion. Never been a heavyweight champion of Mexican or Mexican-American descent in boxing or mixed martial arts. Cain being the first. This may be more of a long-term effect where it may bring a bigger audience, a Hispanic audience, to the UFC and mixed martial arts over time, which will be good because, they are very supportive of boxing. And last but not least, the WEC-UFC merger. This was a big one. The WEC, I love the WEC. I'm sad to see it go because I knew whenever a WC event was on, it was going to be a good night of fights. But the good thing is, you know, you're bringing these featherweights and bantamweights and, of course, their lightweight division into the UFC. These guys are going to get paid what they deserve. And it's going to make overall UFC pay-per-view cards better because we're going to have more lighter weight class fighters, which are more exciting fights for the most part. So this is another thing, probably going to be another long-term thing that's going to help out the sport as well. So I'm going to go with that as my story there, the WEC-UFC merger. Like I said, I wasn't expecting it at the time, although fans have been talking about it for a while. I think it was a good decision to make by Zuffa. And like I said, I think long-term it's going to benefit the sport, in particular the UFC. So that's my thoughts on all those. I'm going to be talking about those on the Science Finance Radio Show coming up in about 45 minutes or half an hour. My co-host, anyone who listens to Sherdog or Sherdog Radio Network, co-host today's scheduled to be Brandon from New Jersey, so that should be interesting as always. Like I said, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on these awards. I'll put all the nominees I have listed in the information part of the video, so click that, as well as a link to my Twitter and the radio show, Science Finance Radio. If you guys get a chance to call into the show, we'd love to hear your thoughts. If you don't get to listen to it live, go back and check out the podcast and let me know what you think. That's it for now, guys. Until next time, I'm out.